And look at what Kamala Harris is doing today. She's campaigning with the daughter of the worst living American war criminal, Dick Cheney, and praising Dick Cheney.
And I also want to thank your father, Vice President Dick Cheney, for his support and what he has done to serve our country. Every endorsement matters, and this endorsement matters a great deal, Liz, and it carries the special significance.
I mean, why?
Yeah, it carries a special significance, all right. You're openly joining forces with, one of the worst war criminals in U.S. history, and welcoming his endorsement. It's just, this party is completely, there used to be some room for taking on neocons. Now at the very fringes, like the Squad, they're critical of Israel, but with the exception of that, the neocon line totally rules, to the point where Dick Cheney and his daughter are openly campaigning for the Democratic nominee for president. And I don't know. I mean, do they think electorally this will help them? It didn't in 2016 when Hillary Clinton ran as a neocon. Trump ran as an anti-neocon, and he won. And for anybody who has been impacted by war, or who can recognize that all the problems here in the U.S., are hindered greatly, address them are hindered by spending so much money abroad on these wars. I don't think they're going to see Dick Cheney's endorsement as a reason to vote for Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris might be making the same mistake that Hillary Clinton did back in 2016 by playing into Trump's self-image as being anti-interventionist.
Who are the constituents for Liz Cheney, who served in Dick Cheney's district and was in Wyoming? I mean, she's campaigning in Wisconsin. Who watches Nicole Wallace, who's the voice of Bush era white glove patrician republicanism and neoconservatism on MSNBC? Who voted for Nikki Haley in the Republican primary? Who voted for Marco Rubio in the Republican primary? Who are these people? None of them are people. It's kind of like the Israel lobby. They're just donors. They're in Northern Virginia. They're people who live off the weapons industry. They're rich people who go to these, they go to dinners and they say, I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal, And what the Democrats are doing is trying to consolidate a regime and not a party that encapsulates and includes every faction within the power elite, except for the Trumpists. And they think that they can just overwhelm them. The problem is the people who elected Donald Trump in 2016, a lot of them suffered the moral and physical injury of the war in Iraq.
Yeah.
And were furious at the Bush wing of the Republican Party, the Orange County suburban Republicans, the John McCain Republicans. A lot of Vietnam veterans hated John McCain and considered him to be an aristocratic flyboy who gave up important intelligence when he was in the Hanoi Hilton. Never liked him. And this is something that the Democrats don't understand. And the Democratic base is so detached from this reality that they're not making Kamala pay a price, as far as I know, for making Dick Cheney Dick Cheney in a skirt one of her top campaign proxies. It's infuriating. But again, this is not about a party. This is about a regime trying to consolidate itself. I don't have the clip in front of me, but maybe you can pull it up and drop it in there while I'm talking. John Kerry at the World Economic Forum, basically sitting in Klaus Schwab's lap, complained that the First Amendment is a huge hindrance to being able to censor social media, quote unquote, misinformation, and that this election is a decisive election because it will decide whether the United States will be able to lead the world in establishing new guidelines for blocking, quote unquote, misinformation, which basically means everything we're saying during this live stream. Tony Blinken, in banning RT and banning Sputnik from the United States, called for a more resilient global information system, basically US control over all information that everyone in the collective West sees and hears. And so if this administration gets in, we are going to see censorship on steroids. And who knows? Hillary Clinton has called for prosecuting and jailing what she calls peddlers of misinformation, not people who are sponsored by Russia covertly or anything like that, just people who peddle what she calls misinformation. This is a very dangerous scenario where you've got an administration official going to, what is it, Davos, Switzerland, to shine Klaus Schwab's shoes and complain about the American institution when you've got Dick Cheney's daughter out on the campaign trail. It's pretty frightening. And they have green lighted Israel moving towards a direct war with Iran. It just feels like, I don't know, the second or third coming of the second term of the Bush administration, but with more force, more power, and consent from rainbow flag progressives who work for Lockheed Martin and gentrify urban neighborhoods.
So I put the clip in there, which we can show, and I'd love for someone to ask Kamala Harris, like, what do you mean by when you thank Dick Cheney for what he has done to serve our country? What has he done? I mean, are you thanking him for, being an architect of the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, of being a key architect of torture, waterboarding? Like, what exactly are you thanking him for?
How did he serve our country? Like,
yeah.
He ducked the Vietnam draft by claiming he had knee problems or something like that. And then he was the head of the VP selection committee for George W. Bush. So he made himself VP.
Yeah.
And that's how he served our country. And then he gave himself a no-bid contract via Halliburton after he retired and received millions and millions of stock options from Halliburton, a no-bid contract in Iraq. And she's hailing him for serving our country. Remember, George W. Bush, when he left office, his approval rating was in the low 20s. So how is this politically wise for the Democrats? I don't think it's about the people. I don't think they care about the people or the voters. It's all about the donor class, which is the same reason why they're letting Israel get away with literal murder.